Before we dive in, do you believe first impressions are always true? Let us know in the comments below. And please, like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories. Chapter 1. The Company Party. Are you really going to invite her? Camilla Vance crossed her arms, looking at Javier Thorne with that smile he knew all too well. Don't tell me you're becoming charitable. Javier didn't even look up from his documents. Isabella Moon, his assistant, was organizing files near his desk, pretending not to listen. It's the firm's annual party, he replied coldly. All employees are invited. All important employees, Camilla corrected, raising her voice just enough for Isabella to hear. Or is your assistant going to understand what we're talking about? The adults. The other partners laughed. Isabella tightened the papers in her hands, but remained silent. Camilla is right, Ramiro Mendez, one of the main partners, interrupted. People of our class don't mix with, well, you know. Javier finally looked up. For a second, his eyes met Isabella's. She looked at him with no pleas, no hope, just with that silent dignity he had never understood. Isabella, he said, his voice harsher than he intended. You're cordially invited to the party this Saturday. I hope you know how to behave. The silence became thick. Isabella carefully placed the files on the desk as if they were made of glass. Thank you, Mr. Thorne, she replied, expressionless. I will consider your invitation. Camilla let out a snort of laughter. Consider? Do you have something better to do on a Saturday night? Isabella turned to her. Her dark eyes flashed for an instant. I always have options, Miss Vance. It's just that some are not worth my time. Camilla's smile froze. The partners exchanged uncomfortable glances. Well, Javier muttered, clearing his throat. Then that's settled. Isabella collected her things unhurriedly. When she reached the door, she paused. A question, Mr. Thorne. Does this invitation come with any particular intention? Javier felt his throat go dry. The others awaited his answer. We just want everyone to have a good time, he lied. Isabella nodded slowly. I see. Have a good afternoon. The door closed softly behind her. Camilla burst out laughing. My God, did you see her? Like an offended queen. It's going to be fun, Ramiro added. Watching her try to fit in with us. Javier said nothing. He stared at the door where Isabella had left, with a strange feeling in his chest he couldn't identify. Chapter 2. A Sister's Wisdom. That night, Isabella arrived at her small apartment completely exhausted. Her younger sister, Sophia, was studying at the dining table. How was your day? Sophia asked without looking up from her books. Isabella collapsed onto the sofa. I was invited to the company party. Sophia raised her eyebrows. Is that good or bad? Bad, very bad. Why? Isabella closed her eyes. She could still hear Camilla's laughter. She could see the mocking glances of the partners. Because I wasn't invited to be included, Sophia. I was invited to be humiliated. Her sister put down her pencil and walked to the sofa. Isabella, look at me. Isabella opened her eyes. Sophia had that serious expression she used when she wanted to give important advice. What do you want to do? Stay home. Pretend I'm sick. Is that what you really want? Isabella sighed. No, I want to go and prove them wrong, but I'm afraid I'll make a fool of myself. Sophia sat next to her. Sister, you've been working at that firm for 3 years. You've seen how they behave, how they talk, how they move in their world. Do you think you can't do the same? They were born into that world. I wasn't. But you're smarter than all of them put together. Sophia took her hand. And you have something they'll never have. What? Real class. Not the kind you buy with money, but the kind you carry in your soul. Isabella felt her eyes well up with tears. What if I'm wrong? What if I just confirm what they already think of me? Sophia squeezed her hand. then you'll be wrong with your head held high. But Isabella has always been bigger than that place. It's time they realized it. Isabella remained silent, looking out the window at the city lights. Somewhere, Javier and Camila were in their world of luxury, sure that she wouldn't dare to show up. Perhaps it was time to surprise them. Chapter 3. The Grand Entrance. On Saturday night, the ballroom of the city's most exclusive hotel buzzed with elegant conversation and rehearsed laughter. Javier adjusted his tie for the 10th time, glancing toward the entrance every few minutes. "I'm just making sure everything is in order," he lied, taking a sip of his whiskey. Camila appeared at his side, radiant in a gold dress that had cost more than Isabella's monthly salary. "Relax, honey. Your little assistant surely stayed home watching soap operas." Camila laughed. It's obvious she wasn't going to come. Ramiro walked over with 2 other partners, all with drinks in hand. "Still waiting for the show?" he asked sarcastically. "I bet she doesn't even have a decent dress. Or maybe she's coming in her office uniform," another added, provoking laughter. Javier forced a smile, but something in his stomach twisted. A part of him hoped Isabella wouldn't come, to avoid the humiliation they had all planned. Another part wanted to see what would happen if she dared. "Ladies and gentlemen," the master of ceremonies announced, "dinner is served." The guests began to move toward the main dining room. Javier was walking with Camila when the murmur of conversations abruptly ceased. He turned to the entrance and felt the air leave his lungs. Isabella was on the threshold of the door, completely still. She was wearing a simple but perfectly tailored classic red dress that enhanced her figure without exaggeration. Her dark hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders. She wore no flashy jewelry, only small earrings that sparkled discreetly. Her eyes swept the room calmly, as if she owned the place. The silence stretched for seconds that felt like an eternity. Some guests looked at her with curiosity, others with poorly disguised surprise. Isabella began to walk. Her steps were confident, measured. She didn't look at the floor, nor did she seem nervous. She moved as if she had been born in ballrooms. "My God," someone whispered behind Javier. "Who is that woman?" Camila had paled, her hand clinging to Javier's arm. "It's," she whispered, "it's impossible. How can she look like that?" Isabella approached the main group. When she was in front of Javier, she gave a slight nod. "Good evening, Mr. Thorne. Thank you for the invitation." Her voice sounded serene, polite. None of the shyness she showed in the office. "Isabella," Javier could barely utter her name. "You look different." She smiled, and that smile completely transformed her face. "Different? I just put on a dress, Mr. Thorne. Nothing more." Ramiro coughed uncomfortably. "Yes, well, what a surprise to see you here." "Surprise?" Isabella looked at him directly. "Didn't you expect me to come, Mr. Mendez?" No, of course not. I mean," Camila interrupted, regaining her composure. "Ramiro means we're delighted to have you here, although I must say that dress is, interesting. Did you buy it especially for the occasion?" The venom in her voice was evident, but Isabella didn't flinch. "Actually, I've had it for years. Sometimes simple things are the most elegant, don't you think?" Camila's eyes narrowed. Isabella had just politely told her that her gold dress was vulgar. "Of course," Camila replied with a forced smile. "Although I suppose for someone in your position, it must be difficult to know exactly what to wear for these events." "You're right," Isabella nodded. "Fortunately, elegance is not something you buy with money. You either have it or you don't." A murmur ran through the group. Several guests had approached to listen to the conversation. Isabella had responded to Camila's attack without raising her voice, without losing her smile. but her message had been clear. Javier watched the scene as if hypnotized. This was not the shy, quiet Isabella from the office. This woman had a presence that filled the space, a confidence that didn't need to yell to be noticed. "Isabella!" a voice behind her said. Everyone turned. An older, elegantly dressed man approached with a genuine smile. "Mr. Dubois." Isabella's face lit up. "What a surprise to see you here, my dear Isabella." The man kissed her on both cheeks. "When I saw your name on the guest list, I couldn't believe it. Do you work with these gentlemen?" Javier frowned. Pierre Dubois was one of the most important investors in Europe, an occasional client of the firm. "I'm Mr. Thorne's assistant," Isabella replied naturally. "Assistant?" Dubois looked at Javier in surprise. "Do you know who this young lady is, Javier?" Javier shook his head, feeling more and more confused. "Isabella was the coordinator of the literacy program we funded in Paris 3 years ago. Her project helped more than 1,000 immigrant families. An extraordinary woman." The group fell into total silence. Isabella only smiled modestly. "It was an honor to work on that project, Mr. Dubois." "And she spoke perfect French," the man continued. "Isabella, you must tell me what you're doing now. Do you still work on social programs?" Camilla looked as if she had seen a ghost. Ramiro had stopped smiling. Javier realized that he knew absolutely nothing about the woman who had been his assistant for 3 years. Isabella Moon had just changed all the rules of the game, and the night was just beginning. What do you think will happen next? How will Isabella's past redefine her present? Share your predictions in the comments, and if you're enjoying this exciting story, like and subscribe for more incredible content. Chapter 4. A Force of Nature. The dinner took place in a tense atmosphere that only Isabella seemed not to notice. Camila had managed to sit strategically near her, ready to attack at the right time. "Isabella, darling," Camila began, deliberately refined as she cut her salmon. It must be fascinating to work with such sophisticated people after coming from such a different environment. Isabella chewed calmly before responding. "Are you referring to working with rich people after working with poor people?" The direct question made several diners stop their forks halfway. "Well, I wouldn't have put it in such crude terms," Camila laughed nervously. "Why not? Poverty is not a contagious disease, Miss Vance, and wealth is not a guarantee of sophistication." Ramiro coughed. "Surely you've had to adapt a lot to work at our firm." "On the contrary," Isabella smiled. "I've found that people are basically the same, no matter how much money they have. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone needs respect. Everyone makes mistakes." "What a quaint perspective," Camila murmured. "Although I suppose it's easy to philosophize when others are paying the bills." This time Isabella didn't respond immediately. She sipped her wine and looked at Camila with genuine curiosity. "Have you ever worked, Miss Vance?" "Of course I've worked." Camila straightened up. "I oversee my family's investments. I coordinate charity events." "I mean, working for a paycheck," Isabella clarified softly. "Waking up every morning knowing that if you don't, there's no money for rent." The silence became uncomfortable. Isabella continued in a soft voice. "I'm not judging you. I'm just saying that every perspective is valid. You see the world from your reality, I from mine." At that moment, a man approached the table. He had a professional camera hanging from his neck. "Excuse the interruption. I'm Marcus Grant from the Global Times. Could I speak with you for a moment, Miss Moon?" Everyone turned to Isabella, surprised. "With me?" Isabella seemed genuinely confused. "I think you have the wrong person." "Are you Isabella Moon, the coordinator of the Books Without Borders project in Paris?" Isabella nodded slowly. "Perfect. I'm writing an article about successful social inclusion programs. Your project came up in my research as one of the most effective of the last decade. Camila gripped her glass so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Mr. Grant, she interrupted. I think you're interrupting a private dinner. No problem. Isabella got up gracefully. We can talk right here if the others don't mind. Grant turned on a small recorder. Tell me about the Paris project. How did you get families from 15 different nationalities to participate in a literacy program? Isabella visibly relaxed. For the first time that night, she seemed completely in her element. The key was to understand that education is not a favor we do for others. It's a right we give back to them. Many of those families had professionals, artists, intellectuals, who had lost their titles when they immigrated. Can you give me a specific example? There was a man, Amara, who had been a literature professor in Senegal. In Paris, he sold flowers in the subway. When he discovered he could teach French to other immigrants using African texts he translated himself, he regained not only a dignified job, but his identity. Grant nodded, taking notes quickly. And the language aspect? I understand you coordinated sessions in French, Arabic, and English, and Spanish and Wolof when necessary. My grandmother always said that every language you learn makes you a different person. I believe it makes you a more complete person. Impressive. Do you speak all those languages? Isabella blushed slightly. I handle the basics well. For in-depth work, I always worked with native speakers. Grant turned to Javier. Mr. Thorne, you must be very proud to have an employee of this international caliber. Javier cleared his throat. All eyes were on him. Yes, of course. Isabella is very valuable to our firm. What projects do you have her working on now? The question fell like a bomb. Javier couldn't say that Isabella spent her days filing papers and serving coffee. We're evaluating new opportunities to leverage her international experience. He lied. Grant smiled. Excellent. The world needs more initiatives like Miss Moon's. Could we take some photos? For the next few minutes, Isabella posed for several photographs. She looked natural, comfortable. She answered questions with intelligence and humility. She talked about her projects without sounding boastful. When Grant left, the table was in absolute silence. Isabella returned to her seat, as if nothing had happened. Well, she said, taking her drink. Where were we? Camila stared at her as if she were an alien. Ramiro seemed to have swallowed his tongue. Javier realized that he had spent 3 years working next to an extraordinary woman without even trying to get to know her. And the most disturbing thing of all was that Isabella didn't seem to notice the commotion she had caused. For her, all of this was simply normal. The night was just beginning. But the rules of the game no longer existed. What do you think Javier's understanding will mean for Isabella and for the firm? Share your predictions in the comments. And if you're enjoying this exciting story, like and subscribe to our channel. Chapter 5, The Aftermath. On Monday morning, Javier arrived at the office 30 minutes late, with a headache that threatened to split his skull. He hadn't slept well since the party. The images of Isabella in that red dress, speaking so naturally in front of the cameras, repeated in his mind like a broken record. His secretary, Karina, was waiting for him with a pile of messages and a strange expression. "Mr. Thorne, you need to see this," she said, handing him her tablet. On the screen, a YouTube video showed Isabella entering the hotel ballroom. The title read, "The Assistant Who Conquered the Elite. Her story will shock you." It already had over 200,000 views. How on earth? Javier sank into his chair. The video went viral last night. It's all over social media. The full interview in the Global Times also came out. Javier played the video. The camera perfectly captured the moment Isabella entered the ballroom and the silence that followed. Then, it showed fragments of her interview with Grant. where she spoke about social projects with obvious passion. The comments were overwhelming. What an incredible woman. I wish there were more people like her. Look how the rich people look at her. They're green with envy. She's got real class. Did you see the blonde's face? Ha, pure venom. Javier's phone rang. It was Ramiro. Javier, did you see the disaster? We need to talk. Now, 15 minutes later, the four main partners were gathered in the boardroom. The atmosphere was heavy. This is a catastrophe. Ramiro paced back and forth. Our firm looks like a nest of elitists who exploit their employees. The phone hasn't stopped ringing, Diego Herrera added. Camila's father, a major partner, journalists, activists, even some clients asking what's going on, and all because of your brilliant idea to invite the maid. Herrera snapped at him. What were you thinking? Javier clenched his fists. Isabella is not a maid. She's our executive assistant. Executive assistant. Ramiro let out a bitter laugh. Since when does serving coffee make you an executive? Did you know she speaks 5 languages? That she coordinated international projects before working here? Javier stood up. Did you bother to read her resume even once? Her resume? Herrera looked at him with contempt. Javier, we hire people like her to do the grunt work, not to give us moral lessons. And at that moment, the door opened. Camila entered like a hurricane, her eyes red and her makeup smudged. This is a disaster, she yelled. They're humiliating me on all social media. There are memes of my face, Javier. Memes! She dropped dramatically into a chair. My friends aren't talking to me. My stylist says I should get a new look because mine is already burned. All because of that. That woman. Camila, calm down. Javier tried to touch her shoulder, but she pulled away. Don't touch me. This is your fault. You invited her. You allowed her to humiliate us. Ramiro seized the moment. Javier, we have to take drastic measures. The firm's image is at stake. What kind of measures? Obviously, Isabella has to go. Today. Fire her? For what reason? You need a reason. Herrera leaned back in his chair. Find something. Delays, a mistake in documents, whatever. But if they fire her now, Camila interjected, wiping away her tears. It's going to look like revenge. The media will make an even bigger scandal. Herrera smiled maliciously. Not if we do it right. A review of her work, some conveniently discovered errors, maybe attitude problems. These things take time. Javier looked at these men he had considered his partners, even his friends. In their faces he saw something he had never noticed before. Fear. Fear that someone like Isabella could expose them for who they really were. No, he said softly. I'm sorry. No, we are not going to fire Isabella. Ramiro straightened. Javier, don't be naive. This woman is destroying our reputation. Our reputation or our hypocrisy? The silence was tense. Camila looked at him, her eyes narrowing. Do you like that woman, Javier? The question landed like a slap. Javier felt all eyes on him. This has nothing to do with personal preferences. Then prove it. Herrera leaned forward. Prove that your loyalty is still with us. Javier looked out the window. Outside, the city continued its normal pace. But inside that office, something fundamental had changed. He could no longer pretend not to see the cracks that had always been there. His phone vibrated. A text message from an unknown number. Mr. Thorne, I'm a journalist from Telemundo. Could we talk about Isabella Moon and the working conditions at your firm? Javier turned off his phone and looked at his partners. I need time to think. We're running out of time, Ramiro retorted. Either she goes, or this is going to get a lot worse. As he left the boardroom, Javier couldn't help but wonder how he had ended up there. A week ago, his life was predictable, comfortable. Now he felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, and someone had just lit the fuse of a bomb. The problem was that he no longer knew if he wanted to put out the fuse or just jump. Chapter 6. A Necessary Apology. 2 weeks after the restaurant disaster, Javier tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, but the cracks were evident everywhere. Isabella continued to work as if nothing had happened. But now the other employees looked at her with a mix of respect and curiosity that hadn't existed before. The moment of truth came on a Thursday night. The partners had organized a dinner with potential Japanese investors at the city's most exclusive restaurant. Camila insisted on accompanying Javier, as she always did for important meetings. "You need to project stability," she had told him while getting ready in his apartment. "After all this scandal, clients need to see that you're still the same." But Javier no longer felt the same, and that night things spun completely out of control. It all started when they arrived at the restaurant. The Japanese investors were already waiting, along with Ramiro and Diego. The introductions were cordial, professional. Javier thought that perhaps the night would pass without incident. He was wrong. Halfway through dinner, while discussing the details of a possible merger with an Asian firm, one of the Japanese casually mentioned having seen the video of Isabella. "Your employee is very impressive, Mr. Thorne. In Japan, we highly value people who combine humility with excellence." Camila put her glass down with more force than necessary. "Well, you know how these social media things are. Everything gets greatly exaggerated." The Japanese man looked at her with polite curiosity. "Exaggerated? But Miss Moon's achievements are documented. Her project in Paris was recognized by UNESCO." Diego coughed uncomfortably. "Mr. Yamamoto, I think the conversation is straying from important topics." "On the contrary," another investor intervened. "A company that leverages talent regardless of social origin is exactly the kind of firm we want to work with." Camila let out a forced laugh. "Please, you talk as if she were Mother Teresa of Calcutta. She's just another employee who got lucky with the cameras." The silence that followed was chilling. The Japanese exchanged glances. "Pardon me," said Mr. Yamamoto in a controlled voice. "But did you just minimize your colleague's professional achievements?" "Colleague?" Camila laughed louder. "She's an assistant. Her job is to organize files and serve coffee. I don't see why we have to pretend she's something more." Javier felt the blood rush to his head. "Camila, stop!" "Stop what? Telling the truth?" She turned to him, her eyes burning with anger. "We're all pretending that woman is some kind of saint, just because she caused a scandal on social media." "Camila, please." "No." She stood up, clearly agitated. "I'm sick of this. Sick of everyone treating that intruder as if she's special. You know what I think? I think she's trying to steal my place." The Japanese watched the scene with thinly veiled disgust. Ramiro tried to intervene. "Camila, maybe you should—" "What should I do? Shut up while that woman destroys everything we've built." She turned to Javier. "Or have you forgotten who was with you all these years? Who supported you when you started the firm? Who has been at every event, every important meeting?" Javier slowly stood up. "Camila, let's go now." "I'm not going anywhere. These gentlemen need to know the truth. They need to know that Isabella Moon is an opportunist who's using her sob story to manipulate everyone." Yamamoto wiped his mouth with his napkin and stood up. "Mr. Thorne, I think this dinner is over for us." "Mr. Yamamoto, please let me explain." "There's nothing to explain." The Japanese man spoke coldly. "In my culture, respect for employees is fundamental. What we've just witnessed tells us everything we need to know about this firm." The investors left in silence, leaving the partners at a table filled with tension. Camila remained standing, breathing hard. "Perfect!" she shouted. "Now, Because of that woman, we lost $1 million contract. Because of you, Javier finally exploded. Because of your spoiled princess attitude that can't stand someone else getting attention. Camila looked at him as if he had slapped her. How dare you? How dare I? You know what, Camila? You're right. Isabella Moon is stealing something. She's stealing the illusion that we're better people for having money. Ramiro tried to calm the situation. Javier, we're all upset. No. Javier turned to him. You know what I found out this week? That Camila has been using my name to close deals without my authorization. That she's been promising mergers and partnerships that I never approved. Diego paled. Javier, what are you talking about? He's talking about how he investigated me behind my back. Camila lifted her chin defiantly. Yes, I used your name. Yes, I moved some contracts. So what? Someone had to make decisions while you were distracted playing social benefactor. Playing? Javier looked at her with a mixture of disgust and sadness. Camila, we've been together 3 years. I thought I knew you. You know me perfectly. You just never liked what you saw. Javier fell silent for a moment. Then, in a very quiet voice, he said, You're right. And that ends tonight. He turned and walked to the exit, leaving Camila yelling his name in the middle of the city's most elegant restaurant. Outside, under the light rain that had begun to fall, Javier realized that for the first time in years, he felt free. Chapter 7. A new chapter begins. 3 days after the restaurant disaster, Javier found himself sitting in front of his computer at 5 in the morning, writing and deleting the same paragraph for the 10th time. Beside him, a cup of cold coffee and several crumpled drafts testified to his internal struggle. Isabella had been absent since Monday. Karina had told him she had requested a few personal days, but Javier suspected Ramiro or Diego had something to do with her sudden absence. The rumor in the office was that the partners were preparing a letter of dismissal. The official version would be a personnel restructuring. But everyone knew the truth. Javier finished writing and reread the document one more time. It was a letter addressed to the city's most important newspaper, and he knew that once he sent it, there would be no turning back. At 8 in the morning, when Ramiro arrived at the office with his usual air of superiority, he was met with an unpleasant surprise. His assistant handed him the morning newspaper with a worried look. On the opinion page, with a photo of Javier Thorne, was an article titled, A Necessary Apology and a Pending Reflection. Ramiro read the first lines and felt his blood run cold. As a founding partner of Thorne & Associates, I feel the need to publicly address an exceptional employee and society in general to offer a long overdue apology. Isabella Moon has worked at our firm for 3 years. During that time, my partners and I treated her not as the capable professional she is, but as a second-class employee whose only function was to facilitate our daily work. The scandal last week was not caused by Isabella. It was caused by our inability to recognize the talent we had in front of us. It was caused by our class arrogance, our social blindness, our comfort with a system that benefits us at the cost of keeping others in positions that do not reflect their true abilities. Ramiro ran to Javier's office but found it empty. His assistant explained that he had arrived early, left some documents, and had left without saying when he would return. Ramiro's phone rang. It was Diego. Did you see the newspaper? Javier has gone completely crazy. I'm reading it now. This is a disaster. He's ruining us. Do you know how many clients have called this morning asking if it's true that we discriminate against our employees? Ramiro continued reading. Isabella Moon doesn't need us to defend her. Her achievements speak for themselves, but we do need to defend ourselves from ourselves. from the moral mediocrity that allows us to sleep soundly while we waste talent due to class prejudice. Therefore, as of today, Isabella Moon will be promoted to coordinator of special projects with the salary and responsibilities she should have always had. I also announce my temporary retirement from the daily operations of the firm to reflect on the kind of company we want to be and the kind of people we want to be. He's crazy! Diego yelled into the phone. Coordinator of special projects? He's giving her a position that doesn't even exist. Wait, there's more. Ramiro continued reading. To Camila Vance, who for years was my partner, and with whom I believed I shared a future, I say that love cannot be built on the foundation of contempt for others. Her reaction last week showed me a side of her that I had denied existed. To my partners, I remind them that a company is not just a business, it's a reflection of our values as human beings. And to Isabella, I apologize for the 3 lost years, for not having seen what everyone else saw from day one, that you are an extraordinary woman who deserves much more than this place has given you. Ramiro dropped the newspaper. His phone was still ringing. Diego was still yelling into the phone, but he no longer heard him. Meanwhile, in a small downtown cafe, Isabella read the same article with trembling hands. Sophia was sitting across from her, watching every expression on her face. "What do you think?" her younger sister asked. Isabella slowly folded the newspaper. "I think it's very easy to write beautiful words when you have nothing to lose." "You don't think he's sincere?" Isabella sighed. "I think Javier Thorne finally woke up. The problem is that he woke up 3 years too late." Her phone began to ring. Unknown numbers, one after another. Journalists, television producers, social organizations. Javier's article had turned Isabella into a symbol. "Whether you like it or not, are you going back to work?" Sophia asked. Isabella looked out the cafe window. Outside, people were rushing to their jobs, each carrying their own invisible struggles. "I don't know," she replied honestly. "I don't know if I want to be Javier Thorne's redemption project." But deep down in her heart, something had changed. For the first time in 3 years, someone had truly seen her. The question was whether that was enough to build something new on the ruins of the old. Her phone rang again. This time, it was a number she recognized. It was Javier. Isabella stared at the screen for several seconds before deciding whether to answer. Chapter 8. Finding True Worth. Isabella let the phone ring until it stopped. Then it rang again and again. On the 4th attempt, Sophia looked at her exasperated. "Aren't you going to answer?" "I'm not ready for that conversation." But the phone continued to ring intermittently all morning. Text messages, missed calls, even an email that Isabella deleted without reading. 3 weeks later, Isabella had found some peace in her new routine. The job offers had come by the dozens after Javier's article. Some were clearly opportunistic, but others came from serious organizations that valued her real experience. She had accepted a temporary position coordinating a digital literacy program for older adults. It didn't pay much, but it gave her the freedom to do what she truly cared about. Javier, according to what she had read in the newspapers, had kept his word. He had temporarily retired from the firm and was involved in several free legal education projects for low-income communities. Isabella had seen his photo in an article about a legal aid program in low-income neighborhoods. He looked different, thinner, less polished, as if he had exchanged his designer suit for something more real. The reunion happened by chance one Saturday afternoon at the Historical Center Book Fair. Isabella was at a small independent publisher's booth, browsing a book on educational programs in Latin America. When a familiar voice said, "Is it any good?" Isabella turned around. Javier was standing next to her, dressed in jeans and a simple shirt, carrying a bag full of books. Javier, Isabella. They looked at each other for a moment that felt like an eternity. He looked tired, but there was something different in his eyes, a tranquility she didn't remember seeing before. "How are you?" he asked finally. "Good. Working on things I like." "I'm glad to hear that." Isabella closed the book and put it back on the shelf. "I read about your new projects." "Ah, what do you think?" "It's easy to be generous when you have nothing to lose." Javier's smile faded. "You're right. But sometimes you need to lose everything to realize what you never truly had." Isabella studied him. There was no trace of the arrogant man she had known in the office. This Javier seemed younger, more human. "Do you want to get a coffee?" he asked. "There's a cafe nearby that I know the place." They walked in silence through the cobblestone streets of the historical center. The fair had filled the area with families, students, and readers of all ages. Isabella watched as Javier naturally greeted some street vendors, and how he stopped to give coins to a street musician. "Since when do you come here?" Isabella asked. "A few weeks ago, since I started with the legal aid program. Many of our beneficiaries live in this area." "Our beneficiaries?" Javier blushed slightly. "The program's beneficiaries. You know what I meant." Isabella smiled for the first time since they had met. "Yes, I know what you meant." The cafe was small, noisy, and filled with local students and artists, very different from the elegant places where Isabella had seen Javier before. They sat at a table by the window. Javier ordered an Americano. "Isabella, chamomile tea. How are things at the firm?" Isabella asked. "Difficult. Ramiro and Diego are furious with me. We lost several important clients after the article. Do you regret it?" Javier considered the question seriously. "The damage to the firm, yes. There were innocent people working there who had nothing to do with all this. But writing the letter, no." "And Camila?" "Camila moved to Miami. Her family has business there. I think she needed a change of scenery after." "Everything," Isabella finished. She didn't feel satisfaction at Camila's downfall, only a kind of sadness at how unnecessary the whole conflict had been. "Isabella?" Javier leaned forward. "I know I have no right to ask you for anything after." "You're right," she interrupted him. "You have no right." He leaned back in his chair, accepting the blow. "But you can try," Isabella added softly. "You can try to be the person you say you want to be, without expecting me or anyone else to forgive you for who you were before." Javier looked at her with something that could have been gratitude. "Do you know what the hardest part of all this is?" he said. "Realizing that, for 3 years, I had one of the most extraordinary people I have ever met right in front of me, and I never bothered to truly see her." Isabella took a sip of her tea. "Maybe you weren't ready to see me. Maybe I wasn't ready to be seen either." "And now?" Isabella looked him in the eyes. There was honesty there, but also uncertainty. Javier Thorne was no longer the self-assured man who believed he had all the answers. "Now what?" "Now I think we're both learning to be different, and that's enough for today." They fell silent, drinking their mugs, while outside the fair continued its cheerful bustle. For the first time in years, Isabella felt at peace with unanswered questions. Sometimes, she thought, new beginnings didn't come with fanfare. Sometimes they simply arrived as a quiet afternoon, shared with someone who had finally learned to see her, building a shared future. Chapter 9. A Legacy of Respect. A year later, Isabella arrived at the office early, as always. It was no longer the small, borrowed room where the program had begun, but its own space on the first floor of a building in the historical center. The walls were filled with photos, graduations from digital literacy courses, families reunited after solving legal problems, children in student scholarship programs. The program had grown beyond what anyone had imagined. It was no longer just legal aid, but a comprehensive center that offered everything from computer classes to entrepreneurship workshops. Isabella had insisted that everything be free and that the schedules be adapted to people's real needs. Javier arrived half an hour later with 2 coffees and a bag of sweetbread from Mrs. Marta's stand. The woman who sold on the corner and who had now solved her pension problems thanks to the program. "Good morning, Director," he said with a smile, placing one of the coffees on Isabella's desk. "Good morning, People's Lawyer," she replied, without looking up from the files she was reviewing. It was their morning routine. Javier brought the coffee. Isabella organized the day. They had developed a work dynamic that worked perfectly because neither of them tried to be who they weren't. "How are this week's cases going?" Javier asked, sitting in the chair across from Isabella's desk. "Elena will finally receive her full pension. Luis got paid the overtime he was owed, and Andrea..." Isabella smiled. "Andrea decided to study law. We got her a full scholarship at the public university. She says she wants to be like us when she grows up." Javier laughed. "Like us? Do you remember when we were boss and employee?" Isabella looked at him over the papers. "I remember when you thought you were my boss." "Touché." The door opened, and Sophia walked in. She was now working part-time for the program while finishing her social work studies. "Isabella, the journalist from the magazine is here. Should I show him in?" Isabella sighed. Since the program had started to receive national recognition, the media wouldn't leave them alone. They had rejected most of the interviews, but this one was for a serious educational magazine. "Show him in." The journalist was young and enthusiastic. For an hour, he asked them questions about methods, funding, and future plans. But in the end, as always happened, he got to the personal questions. "You two have an interesting story," he said. "From conflict in the company to partners in this project, how would you describe your relationship now?" Isabella and Javier looked at each other. It was the question that always came up and that they never knew how to answer. "We're colleagues," Isabella said finally. "Friends," Javier added. "People who are learning to work together," Isabella continued. "And personally," the journalist insisted, "there are rumors that..." "Personally," Javier interrupted firmly. "We are 2 people who decided that the work we do is more important than the rumors people want to invent about us." After the journalist left, Isabella and Javier organized the papers in silence. "Does it bother you?" Javier asked. "That they always ask about this? People always need to romanticize things to understand them." "What if it were true?" Javier asked softly. "What if there was something more between us?" Isabella stopped writing and looked at him. "Is there?" Javier considered the question seriously. "There's respect. There's admiration. There's affection. Is that enough to call it love?" "I don't know," Isabella replied honestly. "But I know it's real, and I know it's ours, no matter what others call it." Javier nodded. "I like our life just the way it is." "Me too." It was true. They saw each other almost every day. They shared meals, laughed at private jokes. They supported each other in difficult moments. Javier had been there when Isabella got the flu. Isabella had been there when Javier received the news that his father had died. They didn't live together. They had no marriage plans. They didn't appear in romantic photos on social media, but they had something that many official couples never achieved. They saw each other completely. They respected each other deeply, and they had built something important together. The world was still competitive, elitist, and unequal, but within their small space, they had created something different. They weren't trying to change the whole world. They were just living more honestly within it. And at the end of the day, when they closed the office and walked together to the subway station, Isabella knew she had found something she had never looked for, but had always needed. Someone who saw her for exactly who she was. And that, she decided, was enough. Did you enjoy Isabella and Javier's story? This tale reminds us that sometimes the most beautiful endings are not the ones we expect, but the most real ones. Isabella didn't need a prince to rescue her. She rescued herself with dignity and strength. And Javier learned that true power doesn't reside in money or social position, but in knowing how to recognize and value the extraordinary people around us. If this story touched your heart, give this video a like and share it with someone who needs to remember that their worth doesn't depend on the opinions of others. The transformation of these characters reminds us that it's never too late to change, to see with new eyes, to build something better on the ruins of what didn't work. If you want to keep reading more stories like this, full of real characters who face situations we can all understand, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single chapter. And now, tell us, what country are you watching from? We love to know that these stories reach hearts all over the Spanish-speaking world. Leave your country in the comments.